Welcome on the Horn with Gary Emineth. We're going to be talking to Charley Armey. Dick Armey, we've done a series of 6 interviews with him, who's a majority leader, grew up in Candu, North Dakota, become the majority leader during, actually, one of you would know it as the Newt Gingrich era when they had the contract with America. And so Dick became famous on the world stage as the majority leader, lives in Fort Worth, Texas, at least he did while he was a congressman, and retired, and we were able to get him for 6 hours. And I've heard about his famous brother, Charley Armey. Charley grew up in Candu. He's the brother of Dick, but also they played hockey and basketball and all the sports together growing up in Candu. But Charley went on to be a scout and was assistant coach at NDSU, but went on to more famous as a general manager of the Los Angeles Rams when they won the Super Bowl in 2000. And I'm an old Rams fan, so I'm excited to be able to have Charley Armey joining us today on the Horn.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here and looking forward to a nice time with you and the people in North Dakota. You can take the kid out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the kid. So I'm always going to be a North Dakota person in my life.
So Charley, I want our viewers to get to know you a little bit. We had a great conversation with Dick, and we're going to be playing some more of his interviews with him, but he had a lot of amazing stories, and he struggled. He said, I was always Charley's younger brother, and I got tired of that. And he said, 20 years later, I'd run into people and say, hey, are you Charley's younger brother? Talk to us a little bit about your growing up in Candu, North Dakota, and what that life looked like.
Well, growing up together, we were always together. All the way back, as far as I can remember, Dick and I were always together. We did everything together. And we were just a duet. And whenever we played hockey together, we played football together. We did everything together, except in some instances where he was a lifeguard at the swimming pool when we were young kids. I didn't do anything like that, but for the most part, we were pretty inseparable as brothers. Like I told you, everybody, because we went all through school together because I was withheld or held back in the 4th grade, and everybody always thought we were twins, even though I'm a year older than Dick. Everybody thought, and all our friends we grew up with, always for some reason thought we were twins, and that was kind of remarkable for Dick and I to get a kick out of that.
So he talked about growing up in the small town of Candu, North Dakota, and playing sports, and it was kind of fascinating when he shared the story about how he even climbed highline poles. And did you do any of that, or what would your career look like? So leading up through the days of playing sports together, and you obviously end up having a very distinguished career in scouting in the NFL and actually being a general manager of the St. Louis Rams. Sorry about the Los Angeles Rams, which they are today. But I want to get your opinion on lots of things. We're going to talk about eventually on future shows. My hope, Charley, is to do 4 or 5 shows like we did with Dick and talk about your time with the Rams, talk about your time, what's scouting like, and salary caps, and some of these amazing players that you helped identify by scouting them. And what does the scouting process look like? Those kind of things, because Beck's such a sports channel that I'm excited to have you share some of those insights, because there aren't many North Dakotans have gone to the level you have. So talk to us about when you played sports, but how you grew up and got in the direction of football becoming a focus of your life.
Well, it was very interesting how it all started, because both Dick and I both played hockey, and we were both pretty good hockey players for a small town. But we were very much involved in all the different sports: baseball, hockey, basketball. In fact, I was playing basketball and hockey at the same time. And basketball coach came, I was on the starting basketball team. He came to me and says, you have to decide, either you got to play basketball or you got to play hockey. You can't play both. So that pretty much ended my basketball career, because hockey was my first love. But Dick and I always played hockey together. We did everything together. But it was an interesting thing growing up, because when I was a sophomore in high school, I was out with a couple of our friends doing hunting in the morning, and we had a car accident, and I actually broke my neck. And so I was in a body cast for 6 months. And the next year, then I was back playing football and playing hockey. So that's quite an achievement in itself. But Dick kept me alive all during that process, and it kept our thing we had between the two brothers going all the time. So He was unique. He was unique in the fact that I guess it's hard to say, but two brothers could be soulmates. That's what Dick and I were, because we were just together all the time. Everything was about us when we were growing up.
So Charlie, I think it's fascinating when I first did my first segment with Dick. I mean, I believe, are you 86 years old?
I'm 86 years old.
86 years.
Except if you look at my Army discharge papers, I'm 87.
Oh,
Because I joined the National Guards in 1955 when I was 15. And in order to do that, I had to use a different birth certificate. And we had an older brother named Gordon. He was a year older than me, almost to the day. And so when I joined the National Guards, I used his birth certificate. And on my Army discharge papers had to be born in 1938. And of course, my Navy discharge has to be born in 39. And the Navy course is the one that's correct.
So when you decided to join at 15 the National Guard, talk to us about that a little bit. Was it because you could make some money and have weekends and go play warrior on weekends? Or talk to us, because you obviously had to work your way in because you're a little bit too young to do that.
Yeah, that was interesting, but you got to remember now, Dick and I came along right after the Second World War. I can still tell you exactly where I was standing and what I was doing when the sirens went off announcing the end of the Second World War in 1945. And the only thing I could think of, I'm finally going to see my father again. So I can remember exactly what it was. And then the Korean War came along. And you got to remember now, during the Second World War and the Korean War, a lot of young men were deployed and lost their lives. So there was a shortage of men. It was kind of the thing to do to join the National Guard and support your military and your country. It was kind of inbred in you. And that's why I did that at my age, which I did. And I stayed in the National Guard then until I joined the Navy. So it was an interesting time, and I don't regret it doing it at all. And my dad, when he came home, he was happy for me to do it, because it was one of the things patriotic things that you thought about then. And the country then was more patriotic overall than the country is today, I think. And that made a difference when you're a young person thinking that you want to do your part. So that's how that all evolved and how it worked out.
You know, I recall Dick in his book talking about your father when he was young. I don't know if it was 5 or 6, but being off at war and the challenges of a mother growing. I mean, kind of those were hard times. And being in a small town, there wasn't much money. There were hard times. If you had a bicycle, you were one of the lucky ones, right? And if you had a ball, you were one of the lucky ones. And so the idea of growing up in these small rural Midwest towns were not like they are today, are they?
No, you spend all of your time with your friends. Like Richard Kramer and I spent as much time together as two people who weren't brothers could do. And he lived just on the street. But you had to entertain yourself. I know I had a bicycle, but old Gus Rudnick's rummage place, I went out and got all the parts and built my own bicycle, because you didn't have money to have any of those things. So anything you got by your own volition and working hard and putting things together. But Richard Kramer was a great guy. He was probably the fastest athlete I ever was around in a high school era. And he was a fantastic young man. And he just lived down the street. And a lot of the stories that we did together were, the things that you remember the rest of your life. But I had a lot of friends like that. And Dick had a lot of friends like that. But it was Dick and I who were inseparable for the whole most part.
So when you say Richard Kramer, that is current U.S. Senator Kevin Kramer's father, isn't it?
That's correct. And I would remember him and his wife got married. Vivian got married. We had quite a party out there, and we were actually trying to steal his bride after the wedding ceremony. So Dale Overton and I tried to load her up in the car, and I don't think Richard talked to me for about 5 years after that.
That's funny. So, I mean, because Dick talked about, in his case, of climbing telephone poles, because Kevin Kramer's father, Richard Kramer, he climbed telephone poles. Did you do any of that work, or did you, because of your National Guard?
I did that, but not till after I came back from the Navy. When I come back from the Navy, my brother got me a job working with the same company he worked with, Rural Electric, and I climbed poles just like he did, and and did that all the time while I was going to college in the summer months when I come back from college. Until, of course, after I graduated, and I didn't do it. But I climbed poles. What I was never good at it is Dick. Dick, those big long poles up there. Dick could climb the pole, get up on that crossbar, and walk from one end to the other, and without a belt. And I could never do that. But he was pretty good at skinning the poles as well. But he had a lot of experience. But he was great on the poles, and I was just ordinary. But I did it. I did it because he got me the job when I got out of the Navy.
So talk to us about you. You said you served in the Navy. Give us a little bit of background where you served and what that looked like.
Well, I spent most of my time on destroyers. I don't know if anybody's, but there's two kinds of Navy. There's sailors, and then there's tin can sailors, and I was a tin can sailor. So people who serve on destroyers know what I'm talking about. It's a pretty hazardous duty. But I went to boot camp and graduated from boot camp. My brother Dick and my mother actually came to the boot camp celebration because I received the honor of being the top candidate or recruit in boot camp. They call it the Honorman Authority. So that was pretty good when to have my brother there and see me off for boot camp. But then I went on to Key West, Florida. I went to sonar school, which was pretty grueling. And after sonar school, then of course I went in the Navy to operate sonar on tin cans around, and I was pretty successful at it. I was off the coast of Cuba a lot of times, and actually in 1959 when Castro took over, I was sitting on a destroyer off the coast of Cuba. Wow. So I had some excitement. Actually in the Navy on a tin can, I was in the Navy 4 years and visited 42 different countries. So
wow, that's phenomenal. We're going to go, Charlie, we're going to go to the break. We come back. I want to pick up on that a little bit further because that's a fascinating story because I love talking to veterans as well. So we've been talking to Charley Armey, North Dakota native, lives in Arizona, former general manager of Rams and Scout in the NFL. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Stop out to our facility, Highway 22 South. Let us build a truck for you.
Hello and welcome to the MHA Interpretive Center. It's the perfect stop along the Lewis and Clark Trail and the cultural hub of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. Nestled along the shores of Lake Sagagawea in Newtown, North Dakota, 1 mile west of the Four Bears Casino. You can enjoy amphitheater performances, art exhibitions, and educational workshops utilizing our Living Cultural Center. Enjoy some coffee, browse our gift shop, and learn about the original people of this land. Learn more at mhanation.com/interpretive center.
Welcome to Arrowhead Cleaners. Newly renovated, modernized, and ready to make your cleaning needs hassle-free. From commercial and residential wash and fold laundry services to the latest in professional dry cleaning techniques, we are dedicated to your unique needs, offering alterations, fabrications, and even custom hat making. So whether you're a busy professional, a family on the go, or even a rodeo champion, Arrowhead Cleaners is here to take your things from messed up to dressed up. Now celebrating our 64th year in Arrowhead Plaza.
Home on the Range offers a nurturing place for teens who may have just come from an unsafe or traumatic environment. Here, they receive therapy and education services centered around animals, and the surrounding nature provides opportunities for work, fun, and healing. Life skills learned at Home on the Range are carried with residents when they return to the community with new talents and a greater appreciation for themselves and others.
Are you dealing with arthritis, nerve and back pain, dry skin, or superficial wounds, but found no relief? Give Stewart's Natural Health a try. For over 4 decades, Stewart's Natural Health has been helping people and animals with herbal and natural oil lotions, ointments, and creams with a mission to help you relieve pain and feel your best using the power of nature. Discover the safe, drug-free solution to your pain, guaranteed or your money back. Visit stewartsnatural.health today.
West River Equipment of Mandan is here to help you maintain peak productivity in your operation. As an authorized dealer for many high-quality equipment lines, we have the new and used equipment it takes to make your farming, ranching, or construction operation profitable and efficient. West River Equipment also has the parts on hand and the experienced technicians in our shop to get your equipment back in action fast. Find what you need at West River Equipment on Old Red Trail in Mandan.
Welcome back to On the Horn with Charley Armey. So Charley, before the break, we were talking just about your time with being in the Navy and being off the coast of Cuba. I want to talk about that a little further. You said you hit 42 countries over the course of those 4 years?
I did 42 different countries, and some very interesting facts. A lot of people won't know this, but I was actually on a destroyer in the Straits of Gibraltar when a cruise ship was hijacked. And our assignment was to track that cruise that stay with that ship. And we stayed with that ship all the way to Belém, Brazil. When I was on the loading party, when we pulled up the river into Belém, Brazil on this destroyer following that cruise ship, it was hijacked, and I was on the working party. But when we got ready to board the ship, the country of Brazil took command of the ship, went aboard, and arrested the hijackers. And then so that was kind of an exciting part. We tracked that ship all the way from the Straits of Gibraltar to Belém, Brazil, and then of course I was on the boarding party, which we never had to do because the Brazilian government came over and took charge of it and took the guys off and put everything back. And I was very lucky that the terrorists never killed anybody on the ship, which was a very lucky thing. But it was something. I was only like 17, 18 years old, so it was something exciting in your life that probably had never happened again and would probably happen to very few people.
That is a fascinating, amazing story, especially the fact that nobody got hurt and they were able to get them off and the Brazilian government got that done. I think it's also what you're talking about is being off the coast of Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That had to be a little hairy.
I remember now, I was a sonarman. I tracked over 20 different subs around in the Windward Straits and around Cuba from the destroyer we were on during that period. You know, people think that the Cuban Missile Crisis was a 13-day period. It was actually about a year, maybe 9 months, but we were tracking freighters coming in and out of Cuba. And we knew long before the whole news broke that they were shipping stuff into Cuba and troops and equipment into Cuba, and we were tracking them. I tracked a lot of different submarines. And then finally, when it came to the crisis point where we had to take a stand, our job was then to not allow any more freighters through the Windward Straits. And our crazy captain, our crazy orders were if they won't identify themselves, then we were to ram the freighter. And of course, I thought to myself, now we're on this little destroyer and they're on that great big freighter. I don't know who's going to win that. It's probably not going to be us. So, but we never had to do that. But we had a lot of encounters with a lot of different submarines and a lot of different freighters. And we actually turned back most of them long before what people remember as the 13 days. It pretty much was over before the 13 days. The 13 days was just a negotiation for us to get our missiles out of Turkey so they would take their missiles out of Cuba. But everything had happened long before that. In fact, I only had a week or two left to go in the Navy when this Cuban Missile Crisis came up, and I got extended because I was in what they called a critical rate, a sonarman. So I got extended, and the guy who came down with the message for me being extended was thrilled because I got to stay in the Navy for a little bit longer. But it was an exciting period. Be involved in history in some parts, it was very exciting.
Well, especially when you're coming home, because when you go down the road of what you're involved with, I mean, you're thinking, I got just a short time left and I'm going to die out here and sea with this Cuban Missile Crisis. This is, I mean, those kind of things as a young man, obviously, there's a lot going through your head, I'm sure, at that point in time of your life.
Yeah, crazy things happened to me in the Navy. I was we were off the coast of Africa when the uprising happened in the Congo, and we were rescuing people coming down bumboats out of the river, trying to escape the mass massacre that was happening when the rebels took over some of the areas in Africa. We spent a good time right off a coast called Dakar, Africa, which was a French kind of holding area in Africa. But I toured all of Africa in the Navy. I was in Cape Town, all of it different. In fact, in Cape Town was an amazing thing. We were there in, I think it was 1960. We were in Cape Town, South Africa, Christmas time, and they did a USO. They flew a person in to do a show on our destroyer for us at Christmas time. It was great excitement for me because that guy who flew in to do the show for us was Louis Armstrong, the great trumpeter and great actor. So a lot of things happened to me in the Navy that I was very excited to be part of.
I mean, Louis Armstrong, that doesn't get any better than that. My father-in-law's an old blues jazz guy. He loves all that. Louis Armstrong's high on his list. We talk about him regularly. So you got a chance as a young man to hear him live on a destroyer. That had to be pretty incredible.
Yeah, and actually he spent time on a destroyer and flew around saying hi to people. And so I was lucky in that. And a lot of things, strange things happened to me. When I was in Key West, Florida, going to the sonar school, they filmed a movie, Pink Petticoat, a submarine movie right in Key West, Florida. And I happened to be on a destroyer that was, if you see in the movie, was pushing depth charges over to make the movie. So then there was Tony Curtis and his wife, and they would all come to the USO. So I got a lot of strange things happened to me when I was in the Navy, but they were all exciting and it was fun to be part of it.
Well, that's fascinating to be able to have those stories and to be able to live through them, and then you go on and so you came back and your bio says you ended up in Valley City playing sports. Talk to us a little bit about that transition from being in the Navy to ending up in college and ending up in the Scout. Give us a little bit of background on your early days in North Dakota College.
Well, it started with a guy named Pat Dillmore. He was our high school football coach, and he went to college at Valley City State. And when I came back from the Navy, I was working on this when my brother got me this job, and I wasn't thinking necessarily whether I wanted to go to college or not, but Pat Dillmore, he got a hold of me and he says, I want you to go to college and I'm going to help you get a scholarship at Valley City State College and to play football. So I listened to him because he was kind of my mentor as far as sports goes. And so I went to Valley City and became part of on the football team. And I actually finished my college career in 3 years and 3.5 years because I got married while I was in college, so I had to get out of there and get busy. But I went to college, played football for 4 years at Valley City and had a great time. We had great teams there for a small college, and I really enjoyed it. So it was a fun time for me playing football there, and it was even more fun when I would go down the road and play a game against Jamestown where my brother was, and we would beat him. So that was even more exciting.
So you played against Dick. You were a Valley City Viking, and he would have been a Jamestown Jimmy or what, So you actually played against each other locally.
Right. Well, he didn't play in college, but I did. And
I see.
It was funny. He was in the theater a lot in college, and he did a lot of plays in college, and I would go watch his plays and stuff. And I actually did some plays also as well at Valley City. I did what I call Ibsen's Dollhouse, a Norwegian play. So anyway, we both kind of followed the same, but he didn't play football and I did, and we had a great time. But anyway, give me more contact with him. And like I said, we were always together even when we were apart.
So, and then after you played football at Valley City. What was your degree? And you said you got your degree there.
I got my degree in history and at Valley City, and then after I graduated, I took a job coaching football in a town called Graceville, Minnesota. I was the head football coach, a head wrestling coach, and athletic director. And I couldn't believe it. I was going to go to law school, but I decided I better take this job They're offering me $6,000 a year to coach football and wrestling and teach 7 history classes. I can't imagine making that kind of money. So I thought I'd go make some money, pay off some bills, and maybe I'll go to law schools later. But so I went to Graceville, Minnesota, and played football, and that was a great experience. And I had a good football team there. We won a lot of games, and one of the great stories about my coaching at Graceville, Minnesota, I had a quarterback there in high school called Mike Coley. He later became a coach at Northern Iowa, where a famous quarterback that I would sign came from, and that was Kurt Warner. So I had a connection from Northern Iowa for Kurt Warner from the kid I coached in high school football. So again, interesting things happen in your life, and you just have to cherish them and find they're very rewarding.
Yeah, that's an amazing story about Kurt Warner and that connection, how life works out that way. You know, when you've lived long enough, like in my age, I'm not quite where you're at, but I'm catching you, is that, you know, you have these intersections in life, you go, wow, how did that happen? And the fact that, you know, Kurt Warner, one of the, you know, I mean, there's your championship NFL, and you helped, I imagine, recruit him. We're going to talk about that in another show, but we're going to stay with North Dakota. But you said you got married in Valley City while you're in college, correct? And so then taking that job only made sense because you're married and you got bills and college. And so you're going to go to law school, and you decide, I'm just going to go coach. So talk to us after you got done there. Where'd you go next in coaching? We got about a minute here.
Yeah, I went from Graceville to Breckenridge, Minnesota as a defensive coach and a high school in Breckenridge, Minnesota. And while I was at Breckenridge, I started working on my master's degree at North Dakota State University. And while I was working on my master's degree, and after the football season at Breckenridge, we were pretty successful. Ron Earhardt asked me to join their staff as a graduate assistant coaching football at North Dakota State University, which I did. I coached the linebackers, and of course, you know, at North Dakota State, even then they were a great football team. I think that when I was there, we were undefeated. And so we were undefeated for a couple of years as I worked on my master's degree at North Dakota State University, working for Ron Earhardt, who became he's a North Dakota native as well, and became a very famous college and pro football coach, as you know.
Yeah, we're going to go to the break, Charlie. When we come back, I want to talk a bit more about your time at NDSU. So we've been talking to Charley Armey. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Base Flug Trailers of Dickinson is a family-owned dealer with expert staff that know their products front to back. We stock over 150 units of all types and can custom order a trailer with the unique features and capabilities you require for brands you can trust. Our experienced service team is the reason we're also the best place to have your trailer customized or repaired. Count on Base Flug Trailers of Dickinson to keep you hauling.
Come on in and experience small-town hospitality and the personalized care that makes car buying a pleasure.
We know that every journey starts with the right car. Whether it's school drop-off, weekend road trips, or your daily commute, we have the right vehicle for you and your family.
With trusted brands, affordable prices, and a team that treats you like family, finding your next car has never been so easy.
We pride ourselves on personal attention and quality service. Beset Motors, where our customers send their friends.
Yeah, U.S. Cattlemen is a member organization that each member has a vote in anything we do with policy. We're representing the independent cattleman or the cow-calf guy or an independent feeder or whatever. We like to support the independent producer. Talking about mandatory ID, we're talking about cool, we're talking about all the legislation that's going to be coming down with the new administration. There's going to be lots of moving and shaking, so always check us out at our website, uscattleman.org.
I'm $27,000 in credit card debt.
Okay.
You have to radically do something different, because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting.
Now's not the time to be doing math. The time to be doing math was when we didn't go into $200,000 of debt.
If you are freaked out and you're stuck in those debt payments and you think it has to be a part of your life, it doesn't.
We are Ladies of Another View. Join us every weekday morning at 9 o'clock a.m. as we discuss the big topics from North Dakota, the nation, and around the world.
We chat with everyone from celebrities and medical professionals to politicians, local business owners, and neighbors about the topics and stories that affect all of us.
We are unscripted and uncensored real news from real people. So join us every weekday morning for Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Welcome back on the Horn with Charley Armey. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. So, Charley, you're at NDSU, and Ron Earhardt's the head coach. And you're right, he had a very distinguished career. Did that have impact on you as you went through saying, hey, a guy from North Dakota is moving up through the ranks in the NFL. Hey, I can do this kind of thing. Did that have some bearing on it, or talk to us about that a little bit?
It had a lot of bearing on it, because when I would see what he had achieved through his success, I thought to myself, well, I can do that. If I work hard and stay with the program, I can achieve some of the things that Ron has achieved. He was a great mentor, and very disciplined in his football knowledge. And he actually inspired me when I wrote my first book on football. I wrote a book called Winning Football with the 4-3 Defense, and it basically was inspired from my knowledge from working with Ron Earhardt, and which I acknowledge in the book, and the things I learned about coaching, and of course was able to carry forward in my coaching career. And so I really enjoyed working there at North Dakota State, and coaching football was a great fun. So I've got in a little story away from football. It just happened to be in North Dakota State, but people will get a kick out of this. In the summertime, all of us that were teachers and stuff, we would get part-time jobs as things to earn an income. Well, I got this job working as a crop adjuster for hail adjustment in crops in North Dakota. And I was working for this great big Norwegian guy. Tellerud was his name. And North Dakota State, one day I came home from football practice, and Lisa, my oldest daughter, she's probably 3 or 4 at this time. And she meets me at the door, and she says, that black man came to see you today. And I said, what black man? She said, that man, he said he's your boss. He said he'd come back. I said, you mean Mr. Tellerud? She said, yeah. I said, what made you think he was a black man? She said, he had a mustache. So it was a great story. I love that. I tell that story to all my black friends. They got the same thing up. So it's just the frame of mind. My daughter, she was a classic, Lisa, when she was little.
That is a classic one. So your boss came by with a mustache, and that's a cute little story. And having these interactions with these coaches and during that period of time, and the influence it has on you, I mean, it really makes who you are, but also many times sets a direction for your career, doesn't it? Because at this point, did you think you're going to coach or scout or be a part of football for your career through life?
No, at that point, I was still thinking about going to law school. And then when I was coaching them with Ron, you kind of get a fever for it. I got a fever that got it in my blood. Maybe I'll try coaching for a couple more years. And then an opportunity came along where they offered me the job as the head football coach and athletic director at Montana Tech in Butte, Montana, which I took, thinking I could coach. Maybe I could coach a couple more years. I've been enjoying it so much, and to take care of my family. By now, I had another daughter named Kelly, and she was a little sweetheart. And so I took the job at Montana Tech in Butte, Montana, and to coach football and be the athletic director. And that was quite a step forward. And it just seems how things just continued to escalate up from that point into my career into coaching. And and then where it took me from one step to the next. It was an interesting time, but coming from North Dakota was a great jump for me, because without Ron Earhardt, I don't get that opportunity in Butte, Montana, at Montana Tech, and without his guidance and without being on a winning football team, an undefeated football team, going down to Texas and winning in a bowl game. So a lot of my exposure starts back with Ron Earhardt, and it actually dates all the way back to Pat Delmore. Without him, I don't get started in football.
So give us a story about Ron Earhardt, something that kind of memorable for someone like that went on to have such a distinguished NFL career coming from NDSU. And I mean, obviously the Bison have grown as an entity in being national champions as they have, and we've fostered a lot of coaches and players around the NFL. Do you have a Ron Earhardt story for us?
Ron Earhardt and I was coaching for, we were in spring practice at this time in North Dakota State, and it was cold and it was snowing and everything was outside and windy. And we had this one guy kept making the same mistake over and over in that little grove of trees by our practice field. And Ron went over to this, I can't remember his name now, it's important. And he said, you go over that grove of trees and stand there and watch practice and see how it's done. And I'll let you know when you can come back to practice. So this kid, he runs over to stand in the edge of the practice field in the grove of trees. And we go out and finish the practice. And then practice is over. We go back into the dressing room and everything. Kids are getting dressed and everything. Finally, one of the guys comes in and says, Coach, I think he's still standing out in the trees. So Ron Earhardt had to go out and get the kid and give him permission to come back in off practice field. But then after that point, he never made another mistake.
That's
coaching's a funny thing, a lot of stories. I had this big kid when I coached at Graceville, Minnesota, high school football player. He's 6'5" and about 260. I mean, he's a huge kid, and he's gentle giant. And the biggest fear he had, because he's so big, is hurting somebody. So we're getting ready to play a football game, and I'm trying to get him to be more aggressive. So we're getting ready to dress for this is a terrible story, but I'll tell it anyway. Ready to dress for our next game, and I go to his locker and I take out his shoulder pads and I hang a brassiere in there. And the players all come in and they all start getting dressed. And he said, Coach, look, somebody playing a prank on me. And I said, no, that's not a prank. If you play like a girl, you dress like a girl. After that, he became one of the toughest players I ever had.
That's a great story, because so often, those impacts that you have. I mean, I think young people today across North Dakota, because Beck being such a sports show or a channel network, is that these young people, coaches, teachers, play an important role in the family of a person growing up and who they become. And stories like that, I'm sure, impacted that young man the rest of his life.
I heard from him for years, and he was such a great person. He went on to become a great heavyweight wrestler too, and then went on and did the same college. And unfortunately, he was killed in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. But he was a great person, and it had a big impact on my life just from the fact that I saw the way he turned his life around. A lot of great things happen when you take an interest in a young man, and lots of kids owe their success to some teacher who saw them along the way, like Pat Delmore did with me, and helped them find their way. And he was a classic example, and I'm very proud of him. In fact, I went to Washington so I could go to the monument and see his name after he was killed in Vietnam.
Wow. But I want to pivot a little bit because it's what's on my mind. We pre-taped this show, and of course, this is going to air Friday after Thursday night's game. So Carson Wentz is playing tonight against the San Diego Chargers. A great NDSU quarterback. He struggled in the NFL. You had some great quarterbacks that you scouted for, and Kurt Warner that you've discovered. We're going to talk about them in future shows, but just since Carson's going to be on the game tonight, we're going to, obviously this will be aired after the game's occurred. Give me your perspective on Carson Wentz as a quarterback.
Well, I think he's a great quarterback. And I think what happens something always happens in their career that changes it for good or for bad. In Carson's case, a lot of people don't remember, he was having a great career at Philadelphia. And then he ran that ball in and took that horrific injury. And that changed his career, kind of set him back and then put him in a mode where he was never able to gain that same platform that he was playing at. And when he was thought of as being the MVP of the league when he was playing there at Philadelphia. But then bad things usually follow those things, and bad luck, and then you get moved from this team because somebody else comes in to take your place. You get traded here and get traded there. I can tell you these stories about these quarterbacks that'll blow your mind. Baker Mayfield. The first year he's at Cleveland, they win he takes him to the playoffs, and then they decide they want to hire a different quarterback or sign a different quarterback. And look what happened with his career. Now he's back on track. So you can't rule out a quarterback, Carson Wentz's ability from regaining his success. And that I think you'll do. You're going to have setbacks. They all have setbacks. But I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's got a great mind on him. The one thing he's always had in his favor, he has a great attitude and he's disciplined. So I like him, and I think he's got a chance to do well. And at this time in his career, may always be just a really good backup quarterback, but he's a quality player, and he just had a little bad luck with his career when he was at Philadelphia, and those things happen. I was telling you the story about it happens to all the great quarterbacks. Brett Favre, one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played. We're playing him in a game at St. Louis for a championship game to see who goes on to the Super Bowl, and the great Brett Favre threw 4 interceptions in our game, which eliminated the Green Bay Packers. So the good things and bad things happen to all these great quarterbacks.
You know, there's such a mental toughness that goes with being a quarterback, and having scouted some, it's got to be the most difficult job in America, in the world, is quarterbacking an NFL team.
Absolutely. You know, when we get into this when scouting, and I'll get into the traits of scouting by position, but the number one trait for a quarterback, number one, is mental toughness. If you don't have mental toughness, you're always overcoming failure at some point when you're an NFL quarterback. At some point, something bad's going to happen on the field. You have to be able to put it behind you and move on. So it's like great hitters have to be able to overcome a slump in baseball. You know, you've got to be able to overcome that. That's all mental toughness. And of course, Carson Wentz had that in spades. And that, you know, North Dakota State is famous for the football, but in my opinion, they're more famous for installing mental toughness into the players when they come there. And it's a tradition that's been handed down for years and years from coach to coach to coach. And it's something that's hard to develop and hard to hang on to, and something that people don't even realize it's part of the program. There's an old sage in pro football. If you go in and you want to change a football program in the NFL, everything's so close, you have to change the identity of the team. In other words, you have to change their mental toughness in order to achieve success. And I can go into that when we talk about football, how Dick Vermeil did that with the St. Louis Rams.
I'm looking forward to that. So, Charlie, we're going to go to the break. We come back, we're going to get one more segment out of you. So we've been talking to Charley Armey, former general manager of the St. Louis Rams and NFL scout. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, y'all, it's Trent on the loose. I want to tell you, Lady Blue and I, we got a lot of miles together. But you know what? You and I got a lot of miles together as well. And all I want to do is bring to you the information on how we maintain a domestic supply of food and fuel for future generations. So I'm going to continue to travel the world and unearth the stories that make it possible that we can live in a free United States of America.
Welcome to Arrowhead Cleaners. Newly renovated, modernized, and ready to make your cleaning needs hassle-free. From commercial and residential wash and fold laundry services to the latest in professional dry cleaning techniques, we are dedicated to your unique needs, offering alterations, fabrications, and even custom hat making. So whether you're a busy professional, a family on the go, or even a rodeo champion, Arrowhead Cleaners is here to take your things from messed up to dressed up. Now celebrating our 64th year in Arrowhead Plaza. Are you dealing with arthritis, nerve and back pain, dry skin, or superficial wounds, but found no relief? Give Stewart's Natural Health a try. For over 4 decades, Stewart's Natural Health has been helping people and animals with herbal and natural oil lotions, ointments, and creams with a mission to help you relieve pain and feel your best using the power of nature. Discover the safe, drug-free solution to your pain, guaranteed or your money back. Visit stewartsnatural.health today.
We are the St. Mary Sisters. We are building a new facility here in Bismarck, North Dakota, for the sake of training young women to be courageous teachers in this state. The sisters will educate the younger generation to be fully alive through truth and discipline. The sisters' life of devotion and joy will make a positive difference in your community. Check out what we're up to, see what's going on, and join our mission to make a difference in the lives of the children of North Dakota.
Ashley, North Dakota is where life moves a little slower, but never gets dull. From hunting, camping, and fishing to safe streets where kids can be kids, this is the best of small town living. And Ashley offers everything you need, from healthcare to hardware to countless ways to stay active. Here, we've invested in our future with major upgrades to roads, parks, and education. Whether you're here for the day or here for life, you'll find Ashley's where you ought to be.
There's never been a better time to rediscover the style, reliability, and all-season, all-terrain fun of the all-new Nissan lineup at the new and improved Ryan Nissan. Whether it's the sleek and stylish Murano, the adventure-ready Pathfinder, or the reimagined, ready-for-anything 2026 Rogue, the all-new Ryan Nissan has the vehicle of your dreams at a price perfect for any budget. It's time to rediscover your passion for the road. It's time to rediscover the all-new Ryan Nissan, engineered to endure.
Welcome back to On the Horn with Charley Armey, Gary Emineth, your host. So Charley, we haven't talked about Montana and Colorado State. I want to get all this stuff out of the way about your life, pre-NFL scouting. So when in the earlier segment, we were talking about your time when you at NDSU and end up at Montana Tech out in Butte, Montana, which is a great town. I love going to Butte. A little liberal for my politics, but at the same time, it's a great city out there in the Rockies. So you end up in Montana as an assistant. Talk about that in Colorado State when you were coaching there.
First of all, I want to tell you a great story about Montana Tech. I went there and I recruited. I played my first year at Montana Tech. I recruited 44 kids out of the state of Montana to play at Montana Tech, and I had one holdover who was a sophomore at Montana Tech. But we were at practice, and I had this middle linebacker, and he was a great player, and I'm trying to teach him how to run what we called a blood stunt at North Dakota State. When I was trying to teach him how to run a blood stunt, when he would call a blood stunt, he would call the direction. The line would go in one direction, he would go in the other. My little girl, Lisa, was always at practice with me. She's standing behind me on the practice field, and I'm trying to get him to understand the concept of the blood stunt. So I tell him, no, now you got to remember, you call the blood stunt, whatever direction you call, you have to go the opposite direction. And so he calls the blood stunt and goes the wrong way. And this is a true story. My little girl behind me hollers, "Hey, meathead, the other right." And the players all called him meathead from that day on.
So that is a fabulous story because, that's what happens. You just never... sometimes I'm one of these guys that gets stuff in my head and I can't get it out. And my kids and my wife, they just shake their head. The old man, if he gets that in his head, they'll just look at their friends. Don't worry, Dad will never get this straightened out. So I would have been the meathead. That would have been my name.
Yeah, Lisa would adopt anything I said, and so did Kelly, and they'd hang on to it, and it would pop up at the strangest time, just like the story I told you with Tallaroot being black, man. She was a classic. But anyway, those family stories, they resonate with you the rest of your life. Memories are what life's all about, and you got to hang on to the good ones.
Amen to that. So you ended up at Montana after Montana Tech. Talk to us about that.
It was a unique experience in Montana. When I went to Montana as a defensive coordinator, Montana was a unique coaching job. It was Jack Elway was the offensive coordinator. I was the defensive coordinator. Betcher was the offensive defensive line coach, and Jack Schwarhub was the head coach and the special teams coach. So we had 4 coaches on our staff at University of Montana, and we doubled back every practice session. So one day we would work offense first, next day defense first, because we only had 4 coaches. We coached both offensively and defensively, and we went on to have a couple undefeated seasons, which was very unique in that sense. But I enjoyed that time because I learned a lot of football also from Jack Elway, who was an excellent football coach. And he, of course, is the father of John Elway, the great quarterback. And John Elway, his dad and I lived pretty close together. And when one of the stories about John was when he and Lisa would go to school, he would walk Lisa down to the bus. So I have a great connection in ways with football. Is a strange world. It's a lot of different connections as you go along. But I enjoyed my time at Montana. I coached at Montana, and we went in and we played. We actually lost the bowl game to North Dakota State. So here I am coaching in Montana, and we're coaching against my old school, North Dakota State, and we lost to them in the bowl game in Sacramento, California. So it was an interesting time. It was a good time. So Jack Swarthout he was a great Second World War paratrooper and a war hero, and it was an exciting time to work for him. I'll tell you that. He was a classic man, and actually a Second World War hero from the 101st Air Troopers.
So I mean I'm an old Bronco. I lived in Colorado for a while, and I'm a Rams fan pretty much all my life, going back to Roman Gabriel days. So that's a long time ago. And I ended up in Denver, living around Colorado for about 10 years. And after about 4 years, I go, that's all they talk about is Bronco football. I might as well be a Bronco fan for now. So I've just followed Elway. What a great career. And the fact that you were able to have your daughter grow up with him and coach with his father, that's kind of a quite an interesting dynamic that occurs in life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, the things that you run into and how things come back, and people you meet. Like I say, they're dynamic in your memory, and they stay with you forever. And I enjoyed when I coached at Colorado State. I went there as the assistant head coach and defensive coordinator, and I coached there. And first couple of years, I was a defensive coordinator, and the last couple of years, I was the offensive coordinator. So we had great teams there too, and it was a great experience. And you meet unique people when you're in coaching. Our head football coach was a guy by the name of Sarkar Slanian, and he was a great and a unique coach and has a great history. But the stories about Sarkar Slanian are remarkable. His parents were refugees coming out of Turkey, and they were Armenians, and the Mormon missionaries rescued his family and brought him to Salt Lake City, Utah. So that's a great story in itself and how that developed. But it was an honor working for him, and I learned a lot of things about life working for him. And he too, by the way, was in the Second World War as a pilot.
Incredible stories and how life and war and these life interacts, and it ties you back because there's so many people out across this country in America whose families served in the service and have these connections, and being the toughness that goes to being in the military, end up in football. So that's interesting, kind of a little bit of that connection. After you left Colorado State, you ended up moving into doing scouting, and it looks like by your background, you ended up scouting in Buffalo, which I can almost figure out that connection. Tell us about that.
Well, there was an interesting Chuck Knox and a guy named Poland, who was the personnel director, and I had an opportunity at that time to go either with the Buffalo Bills. Chuck Knox wanted me to come there as a scout, and I had an opportunity at the same time to go to San Francisco as a scout. And the guy who was coaching the Rams now. His grandfather was the general manager of the 49ers and offered me a job. And I took the job with the Buffalo Bills mainly because of Norm Pollum and Chuck Knox. Chuck Knox was a kind of a coaching idol for me, and I love the opportunity of being able to work with and around Chuck Knox. He was a great, I could tell you wonderful stories about Chuck Knox that when we get into more into pro football, I'll touch on a few of those. But that's how I wound up at the Buffalo Bills as the West Coast scout. And it was quite an honor for me to move into that area. And Fum McGraw, the great football player from Colorado State, he helped me get into that coaching as well and into that scouting area. So that was kind of a unique experience for me and how that transitioned.
Next show we're going to do next week, we're going to talk about scouting, but you had a little interim part between scouting where you did some other coaching with the Denver Gold. Talk about that.
Yeah, Red Miller was a classic friend of mine. Red Miller was trying to hire me when I was coaching at Colorado State when he was the head coach at Denver. He was thinking about trying to offer me a job as a linebacker coach, which didn't work out, but we were good friends. And then when the USFL came along, he became the head coach of the Denver Gold. And then he contacted me and wanted me to come and work with the defense and coach the defensive line and run his personnel department at the Denver Gold, which I did. It was an exciting time, and we can get into a little bit of that. Get into how I helped set up the draft board for the New Jersey Generals, who were owned by Donald Trump. So there was some interesting things happen. Like I say, everything is very interesting how things unfold in your career. But I really enjoyed working for Red Miller, and he was a classic. And again, one of the old-time, well-disciplined coaches, and he was one of the old throwback type coaches. Everything was a discipline. Everything was built around discipline with him, and that's the way life should evolve. That's the way life evolved with me. When my destroyer I was on off the coast of Cuba, our captain had a big sign on our destroyer on the front of our 01 deck. He said, "One wrong, all wrong." So the sign says, "Do your job." So that was embedded in you, the discipline. All starts with me with coming out of high school, and then of course the Navy just reinforced my discipline.
So Charlie, I appreciate you joining us today on The Horn and on our Open Range show on Beck TV. Next week we're gonna focus on scouting and what it means to be a scout and what that all looks like. I think that's going to be fascinating because I think the whole process, obviously scouting leads up to the draft, and I'm looking forward to having you help us understand that process. So thanks for joining us today on The Horn.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about scouting and how it develops, and really how you develop the ideology about how to get it done and find the players, and then explain why everybody says, well, that guy wasn't drafted, he turned out to be a great player. I could explain how that happens too. So I'm looking forward.
That's going to be fantastic. So thank you for joining us here on Horn. I'm Gary Emineth, your host on Open Range. We've been talking to Charley Armey. Thanks for watching.
Come on in and experience small town hospitality and the personalized care that makes car buying a pleasure.
We know that every journey starts with the right car. Whether it's school drop-off, weekend road trips, or your daily commute, we have the right vehicle for you and your family.
With trusted brands, affordable prices, and a team that treats you like family, finding your next car has never been so easy.
We pride ourselves on personal attention and quality service. Beset Motors, where our customers send their friends.
Now you can have the personalized forecast at your fingertips when you need it. Beck's exclusive Weather Insight is information tailored to you. Radar, weather alerts, forecasts, and videos. Download the free Weather on Beck News app. Search your app store now.